Oh, hello. Welcome back. It's Sarah from Roadworthy here with a weekly reads. I'm in a slightly strange location. This is a part of the dock that I'm sitting on. I'm sitting in the boat launch here, and it's early in the morning, and I hope this works out because there should be a lot of boaters coming out to launch their boats because it's going to be a hot day here in Seattle. And I'm not going to complain about the heat because we are certainly not having it like anybody else around the country. So this week has been kind of funny. So my youngest son, Gavin, he's a Swiftie, and Taylor Swift comes to town this weekend, and he is going Saturday night. I have been hearing about Taylor Swift and what's going on with the Eras Tour all summer long. He's probably going to kill me if he ever sees this, which I don't. Anyway, I'm hoping he doesn't. But he has been plotting and scheming, like, how is he going to get to the concert, you know. Now there's a light rail stop at the stadium. It's the stadium stop. And we have a light rail station like 3 blocks from the house. And I said, well, you're going to take the light rail. Duh. And he was like, oh, Mom, that's brilliant. And then a couple days later, he comes to me and says, Mom, Taylor stops at 11:30 and the light rail stops running at midnight. Do you think I need to email the mayor and let her know that Taylor Swift is coming to town and the light rail station, or the light rail, needs to be running longer than midnight? And I almost said, yes, I think you should. Mostly because I'd want to read that email really badly. So I had to change locations. It suddenly got super busy over there. Boats coming in, boats pulling up to leave. It's exactly as I feared it would be. So I'm moving. Anyway, that's probably enough chitty chat about Taylor Swift. Just believe me when I tell you the Taylor Swift conversation at my house is nonstop. But that's not why you're here. It's not what you want to hear about. So we're gonna kick into the books. Last week I talked about some, stressful, challenging things going on in the house, and that's a little bit continuous. So I've picked up a lot of books and put down a lot of books, usually within a couple pages. So I'm not going to talk about those here because it's not clear to me. Is it the book? Is it my headspace? So let me start with the things that I finished, and they're both BookTube at War Books. I finished The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. This is considered a Vietnam classic. Tim O'Brien served during the war himself, and this book was published in 1990. But each chapter is essentially a short story. I guess I'd call this interconnected short stories. One of the blurbs calls it faction, which I also think is kind of a perfect description. They're stories, but they're based on factual events. Anyway, more on that in a second. But some of these chapters were published as short stories in other publications. I saw it going back as early as like 1984. there may be some that are even earlier, but you know, some of these chapters describe events during the war. Some of them describe events, you know, immediately following. Some are even reminiscences about the war, you know, 20 years after the fact. And some of the chapters are really almost essays reflecting on the story that was in the preceding chapter. There's a lot in here about memory, imagination, truth and storytelling. There's a great quote in here about something like, story truth can be more true than happening truth. And I thought that was brilliant. And I think it speaks to what a lot of these stories about. They're not necessarily 100% factually true, but they contain the spirit of what happened and reflect the emotional or psychological experience of the people involved. You know, this book has just a hopeless, helpless tone most of the time, like this dark absurdity in a lot of the stories. I would guess I'm thinking of those stories that really take place during the war. And I find that a lot of Vietnam literature has that same bleak, dark tone, much more so than World War I or World War II books. This book, you know, the prose, it's fairly straightforward. It's not flowery, but it's really affecting and really impactful. I think one of the brilliant things in this book too is, you know, he hits a lot of emotional notes. It's not the same note every single story. If you've not read this book, it is definitely worthwhile. I would definitely pick it up and give it a whirl. The next book that I finished was The Daughters of Yalta by Catherine Grace Katz. This is a work of popular history about Catherine Harriman, Anna Roosevelt, and Sarah Churchill, who attended the Yalta Conference with their fathers. So Sarah Churchill's obviously Winston Churchill's daughter, Anna Roosevelt, FDR's daughter, and Catherine Harriman was Averell Harriman's daughter, and he was the ambassador to the Soviet Union. So I think what Katz is trying to do in this book is correct what she perceives as perhaps an oversight or a slight of more academic historians who've written about Yalta. In those books, that Katz describes those books as really relegating the role of these daughters to hostesses, hangers-on to the conference, and not really integral members. It is true that these three daughters were unofficial attendees, right? They were not representing their governments at this event. They were there at the personal invitation of their fathers. So, you know, so in this book you get their observations about people and events through diary entries, letters written home, that kind of thing. So it is true that they weren't obviously there, you know, in conference rooms doing the work. They were on the other side of the doors. but Katz really wants to talk about their importance to their dads as sounding boards, as just emotional support. Sarah Churchill and her father would often be talking about things late into the night, as would Kathy Harriman and her dad. Roosevelt is actively dying of congestive heart failure during Yalta, and he does die 2 months after Yalta. And Anna Roosevelt is there really trying to safeguard his health. So she would get up in the morning, run around and meet with people, basically debrief with all the U.S. officials, and then report back to her dad, like, let me give you the summary so you don't have to actually meet with all these people. They often had humorous anecdotes about food, the bathroom situation. So there's just a funny anecdote about the British palace had 4 bathrooms, and Winston Churchill, his bedroom had a private bathroom, and it had the only flushing toilet. So there are just funny stories about, the British assigned for their delegates, who got assigned to what bathroom, and how people would start lining up in the middle of the night to save a spot for their boss, to wash up in the morning. Anyway, there are lots of funny little things, funny little food stories, caviar at every meal, cabbage soup for lunch, and so that a lot of those anecdotes are what provides the gossipy tone to this book. You're not going to learn about the political arm wrestling that went on behind the scenes at Yalta. That's not what this book is about. But you do get their unique perspective on their concerns, their father's concerns. They're just in this funny role, right? They're on the periphery, but yet they're in the inner sanctum. So, they definitely have a unique perspective on events, and in this book captures that. Because of the headspace I was in, I decided to pick up The Light of Uncommon Stars, Light from Uncommon Stars by Ryka Aoki. I wanted to, I don't pick up sci-fi fantasy books very frequently. And when I do, it's because I want just something readable, plot-driven. This book is about 3 characters. Katrina, who is a transgender teen runaway, who is a self-taught violin player. Shizuka, who is a elite violin teacher, and she needs to deliver the souls of 7 violin players to hell in order to escape damnation herself. And she has delivered 6, so she's got 1 to go, and she has a deadline of 1 year. And Lan, who is mom/captain, leading her family in hiding from an intergalactic empire, and they're hiding out by operating a donut shop here in East LA. And these 3 characters meet up. I never understood the term cozy fantasy. I was like, what is that? but now I know. And now I know it's not for me. You would think, the way I describe those three characters, that there'd be some tension. And, there's kind of high stakes there. But yet, this book has a very humorous, lighthearted tone to it. Again, I DNF'd this book after about 100 pages. I think cozy fantasy is not for me. And again, this may have given me sort of that mental break that I needed. And so after 100 pages, I didn't need any more. I don't know. But there are a couple things I did appreciate in this book. One, this book is really a love letter to those Asian immigrant communities in East LA. There's a lot in here about, people, emigrating to the United States and moving into these communities and having to adapt to what's there. And then these communities slowly evolving as these as these immigrants begin to thrive and prosper. And there's a lot in this book about Katrina's confidence and comfort with her own gender expression, and struggling with that and worrying about, will other people, or are other people accepting of her gender expression? A lot of the emotion of this book was really about Katrina's challenges as a transgendered teen. And I really appreciate seeing that on the page. It as a cisgendered person, it just gives me a better appreciation for a possible trans experience. I could have kept going with this book, but I knew it was going to be a 3-star for me at the end of the day, so kind of why keep going? So I really just felt like I was ready to move on to other things. So, a little bit of a mixed bag for me this week. Not a super great reading week. And like I said, I picked up a lot of things and put them down. So I don't really have something going that I'm super excited about right now. So stay tuned for next week, because who knows what I will have. If I haven't finished anything, what at least did I actually get sucked into? We'll see. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next week.